What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Games Growth Podcast. I am Warren Woodward, co-founder of Upptic. I'm your solo host today because Xander is on some much-deserved PTO. But while Xander is out, we're going to have a really awesome episode. We're going to do an episode today with Upptic's awesome creative team. And we're really going to focus on how creative is powering games growth today, the trends we're seeing, what we're seeing working, what's not, what trends are dying, and hope to give you some actionable tips of how you can be improving performance of your games growth through improving your creative tactics and learning some stuff from our awesome people here. So without further ado, the podcast is brought to you by our team here at Upptic. Here at Upptic, we do everything to help games grow, user acquisition, analytics, and of course, creative, which is what we're digging into today. So we have three awesome guests today. We have Ava.
Hello, everyone. Great to be back on the podcast, Warren. I'm the creative director here at Upptic and happy to be on today.
Awesome. We have Rachael joining as well. What's up, Rachael?
Hey, everybody. I'm Rachael. I'm the art director at Upptic, and I just waved to you all, but you can't see me. So thanks for having me.
And we have Kade joining also. What's up, Kade? Welcome.
Hey, everybody. I'm a motion graphic designer. Great talking to you all.
So let's begin. Why don't we just start with trends? So I think one thing that we try to be super savvy about here is just like how creative is changing and evolving and what trends we're seeing in social media, how we can use that in creative. So I don't know who wants to start here, but what are we kind of seeing as like emerging creative trends that we're leaning into for performance marketing for the games that we support lately?
We've been seeing a lot of success in UGC, so user-generated content style creatives. So creatives and ads that mimic what people are seeing naturally in their feed already. Mm-hmm. Things that don't initially look like ads are performing well, but also still show the game in, a real and accurate way. So, for example, videos that have an intro that has a live action person and then transitions into gameplay that shows the game does well. Other ones are like what we call cozy theme setups have done well. So, like a coffee in a teacup with some very TikTok style text on screen with something like best idle game recommendation and with a teacup and then transitioning to gameplay. We're seeing a lot of that do well.
Kade, I know, within our team, we've been doing UGC content for a while. The specifics of it, I think, continue to change and evolve, but maybe for teams that haven't gone as deep down the rabbit hole, can you just share a little bit about just sort of the psychology of why we see UGC content work rather than more slick and shiny ads?
Definitely. I mean, a lot of where people are seeing ads is when they're scrolling on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. So when they see ads that fit in with the content that they actually want to consume, I think that appeals to people. I think that's the psychology there. And I think also people are really craving authenticity. I think there's so much very sleek and polished trailers, and then you play the game and it looks nothing like that. So I think people seeing just someone holding their phone and it's just a video of so you actually see them holding the phone and the game on the phone and them actively playing it. You know that's what the game really looks like, and I think that's resonating with people.
Yeah, it's such a simple concept. I mean, sometimes when we show, we work with some big brands here, and sometimes when we first pitch them this idea, they're like, "That's it? This looks pretty cheap. This is what this why are we making something that's so ugly, so simple?" But I think that realness and not feeling like an ad is quite powerful. Rachael, Ava, any other thoughts on other kinds of emerging trends that your team has been focusing on this year?
Yeah, I think for me, building off what Kade was saying around authenticity, is showing relatable moments too. We saw one ad for a client where it was a guy sitting in a car just waiting. It looked like maybe he was waiting for someone to get out of their appointment or something, and him and his friend were playing the game just waiting in the car, and it was totally casual, off the cuff. It was very obviously not ad-like and not polished at all, but if someone's waiting in a car or waiting in line or at the dentist's office, anything like that you've done multiple times in your life is super relatable, I think helps.
And I think building off of that too, just the thread about authenticity is we're seeing the rise of what we call the developer style interview, which is where we actually put some of our clients on the spot to ask them questions and interview them about their product and their game and get their own natural reactions and get them speaking really passionately about their own product. And that seems to be working really, really well across our whole portfolio. We've tried a number of these approaches out. And I think that there's something that people really gravitate towards when they're meeting the makers of the game. And it doesn't even have to be, could be an artist or a developer or even someone who just works more closely on the product side. But I think that's kind of one-upped the UGC authenticity trend to a new level this year.
Yeah, I can definitely say like that's one of the ones we've seen really break out for a few of the games we work on. And again, it's kind of counterintuitive. Like the 1.0 era of UGC content, it was like everyone thought of it as kind of like influencers, right? And this is almost anti-influencer. So it to the teams we work with, it's kind of counterintuitive. It's like why would you want to put me on camera? Like I'm shy, like I don't talk on camera. But like that realness, and I think players seeing that like, oh, a human, like a team built this game and they care about it and they care about us. We're finding that quite compelling and converting super well. So I think that's some good notes on emerging trends. And then what are just sort of like tried and true stuff that like we continue to go back to the well, kind of like continued strength in existing formats that we're still leaning into this year?
I can take that one. We definitely are still seeing a lot of the over-the-shoulder style UGC videos working out really well, which is not even showing someone's face, but just a voiceover of someone playing the game, often called over-the-shoulder because you're just like looking down over their shoulder as if you're seeing the game screen too. So we're still seeing a lot of that work really well. We're also seeing a lot of like informative content, ads that don't feel like ads, they feel like information. They really work out well for us. And so if people feel like they're getting an ad value and information about the game and insider tip, those tend to work really well for informational content that continues to do well. And then also just straight up motion graphics and showing the actual gameplay works really well for us too. Not UGC, but just showing gameplay and showing actual experience. So it converts well and attracts the right player into the game.
Yeah, I mean, the throughput, like in some ways, like the themes that we're describing don't seem that related, but the throughput that clicks with me is like, this is like content. Like it's content that either looks more natural to a user or provides value to a user. It's not an ad. It's not buy this thing. I mean, I think that's kind of an overarching theme I see in what's working in our portfolio. So on the other side, what are kind of themes that we see dying off or that you see other teams like continuing to lean into but maybe they shouldn't be leaning into anymore?
I can jump in here. I have a very strong opinion on this one.
Let's go.
The AI voiceovers. I'm seeing those everywhere still, and I don't know about you guys, but as soon as I hear or see one, I can immediately tell, oh, this is an AI VO. And some of them have gotten really good, like with the accents and the tonation and the inflections. But yeah, I think we're definitely seeing people get sick of that and are going to see that trend die off. I just saw a video from a client yesterday where they started with an AI VO and then a real person butted in and you could tell the difference was so startling. And she said, okay, AI lady, it's my turn or something like that. And then she said, okay, I have to hand the mic back over to AI lady. And then the AI voice comes back on and it says, play now.
Welcome to a day in my life trapped in a coin-operated machine.
Hold on. Yeah, that's me. You're probably wondering how I got in this position.
I thought that was a great example.
I like that.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing the AI avatars die off a little bit too. They kind of like popped on the scene and we had a lot of fun making ads with them. We thought like we used them very ironically and for humor and our clients got a kick out of them. It was really fun to like kind of test out that trend, but we're definitely seeing it die off, not necessarily in usage, but in performance. So we still see a lot of them in the wild looking at ads, but definitely seeing not as good results of those and fatiguing them on that trend.
Any other trends that we see that, you know, that we want to call out as kind of on their way out before we move on to the next area?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that like fake gameplay is still something that people lean into, but don't do it. Doesn't work. Upsets your user base and will just annoys people when they see it and then they get to the app store and it's a completely different game or install it. And we're also seeing a bit of a decline in skits and multi-person UGC that just kind of feels like a contrived forced setup. Yeah, very staged, very scripted. So UGC that feels very scripted and forced is definitely not performing as well for us and not something that we recommend leaning into heavily.
Yeah, so we really do see like a macro trend here, even though it kind of goes across formats and styles of things that feel real, that are value add, are performing better. And things that feel highly staged, highly polished, or misleading that are more on the just pure clickbait side, we really see those starting to die off. Especially, I think, for teams like ours, like we're not just trying to measure like, you know, the highest click-through or like how low can we get the cost per install, but like we're actually looking at like, are the players coming through, continuing in the game? Are they spending in the game? Are they retaining? And so I think it makes sense. Like perhaps with AI, we had some novelty when these trends were emerging, but now people are getting a little burnt out and back to wanting things that feel sincere and real.
It could be extremely challenging when it comes to user-generated content style ads on one hand are doing very, very well, but on the other hand, if they don't come off as authentic, if they come off too scripted, these skit styles where it just feels very, very forced, those don't do well. So it's very tricky. On one hand, if it's done right, they can be the big winners. But if you don't do it just right, it comes off very forced, very scripted, very unnatural, and it does the opposite.
What are some other sort of like current trends and best practices that teams should be thinking about if they're developing in the UGC space?
Yeah, giving the people talking room to talk naturally. When you're giving someone a very, very forced script, saying things that they would, in a way they would never naturally say, it's gonna sound forced. Even if a person is a good actor, it will come off as acting. You can tell when someone's reading off copy. If you're working with people and you're filming them and you want them to sound authentic, let them speak naturally. And this is really hard because, people want to have control over how their game is spoken about. So a lot of times they want scripts and they want that script to be followed. But then you hand someone a script and you say this naturally. And if it's not how they would naturally speak, it's going to come across that way.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think some of the more challenging projects that we've tried to do this really natural feeling UGC for is sometimes when we work with these large brands that might have a lot of different stakeholders that need to sign off on the script or need to be very particular about language. That can make it an uphill battle to really make things sound natural.
Yes, exactly. There's been times on, other projects I've worked with certain clients where they'll say, I want you to make this video for me, but we have to have this phrase,
Right.
And sometimes it doesn't sound remotely natural and it's clearly plugged in. And, if the whole idea is it's, user-generated content that is very authentic, then having some very scripted line in there, it just completely, is counterintuitive to what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I think in addition to being natural feeling and authentic with UGC, I think it's also important to be timely, right? That's another challenge that we're always working against is just, can we capitalize on the trends before they die off? Any thoughts around sort of like best practices for that aspect of UGC?
Yes, that is an extreme challenge because especially if you are trying to make things that are relevant to TikTok, trends go so fast. And, it's almost like a joke on TikTok that once you see ads that are jumping on the trend's dead. And if you are one of the first people to jump on it, some of those do really well. I've seen brands jumping on trends and get huge traction. But if you're too late, people are bored. They don't care anymore. They've moved on to the next thing. So you have to be really quick on it.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess to summarize, like when we're thinking about UGC and our tips to other teams out there is like, you really have to make almost like a parallel and differentiated work stream for this. Like you can't have the same sort of slower, more methodical, more detailed feedback cycles. Like you need things to be kind of quick and loose, because if you take so long in your feedback and re-editing of these concepts before you actually get them to market, you kind of lose the whole point and the whole value. And I see some teams kind of missing the mark with UGC because, they take 2 months to go through the feedback process and adjust the script to be just perfect. And they put it out and they say, oh yeah, we tested UGC, it doesn't work. And it's like, you haven't really tested UGC if you've tested it in that way.
It is very self-sabotaged.
Yes, absolutely.
Actually, getting to chime in on that too, where sometimes we'll see clients are willing to try UGC, but then they'll slap like a really branded in card at the end of it, or heavily branded logo intro for the first few seconds. So it's just tough to get past those requirements with brands certain times where, you're trying something that actually does look really authentic, is unscripted and looks really natural. But then if you kind of put all that branding or motion graphics at the beginning or the end, it's just kind of like the kiss of death for UGC, especially on TikTok. So I think that's an important call out too. It's not just about the content, but the branding around it.
Absolutely. And like we keep hearing these same themes from y'all of just like, just let it feel natural, let it feel loose, and if you're throwing like your branding and your end card on it, all of a sudden it's feeling like an ad and you're repulsing the viewer again. I'd like to maybe go from there to kind of that next big macro trend that we called out up top that we have to dig into, which is just the role of AI, how it's affecting actual creative, but also how it's affecting our team and our workflows. And Rachel, maybe I will put you on the spot and have you start here because you've really led on a lot of our teams, I think, kind of research and experimentation with implementing AI into our work in different ways. Maybe just start of just your thoughts on the current state of, AI generated content and both AI tooling and how teams should be thinking about that right now.
Yeah, I mean, as far as AI tools go, like the ones that I find myself using over and over again are like ones that help speed up production and processes that I'm not good at. Like I'll use ChatGPT, for example, to write better feedback, honestly, because I'm not a writer. I stumble over my words a lot. So I have in my head like what I want to say, but honestly, ChatGPT makes it a lot more understandable and it helps me give better feedback to designers. So I'm all for using that in daily work. And then also tools that help with captions and subtitling, basically things that would be extremely tedious and time consuming. I'm all for creatives digging in and using those more, like making different iterations for subtitles. And there's one example I use a lot where we do a lot of CTA buttons, and I have one style of button, but we want to test like different colors. Plug that into Adobe Illustrator and you can generate multiple different iterations on it, and it doesn't take me, however many hours to make 20 different buttons in different shades of green and red. So that really helps speed up production too. Yeah, basically things that speed up tedious tasks, I'm all for when it comes to creativity. Not so much ideation and like animation and art. I think I'm a strong proponent that should stay with people.
Got it. Ava, Kade, any thoughts on how you both individually or you're seeing other folks out there utilizing AI?
I find it extremely useful for tedious tasks like captions, where before, I'd be going in and doing it myself. There's nothing creative about that. It's just busy work, so having AI do that for me, it just speeds up processes and makes it so I can spend my time on, things that are valued having a human touch. For a while, I was using Adobe's, one of their tools to clean up voice recordings. I was using that. It was like their enhanced tool for audio and help just auto clean up my audio because,
right.
I'm a motion graphics guy. I'm not a sound mixer,
Right.
So, I mean, I do what I can, but that's, it's interesting though, because that tool, I was using it for quite a while and then I don't know what they did, but they tweaked some things. And now when I use it, it has like almost robotic sound to it. And it suddenly just got way worse to the point that I just stopped using it entirely because it was making my audio sound weirdly robotic and worse. So it's interesting. Sometimes I can like get something in my flow and then, I don't know, something they just tweak with how it works and it can be completely unusable.
Yeah, the models are evolving and changing so quickly. I'm guessing probably just like the underlying model they were using for the audio was updated at some point, and this one is not so good.
Yeah, it must have. Yeah, because before it was doing what I needed. It was taking out like the hissing in the background. It was just it was just cleaning it up. That's all I needed. Now like I turn it up and I sound like I'm weirdly auto-tuned almost. I don't know. That's the thing there with updating the models and stuff like that. That can often happen where something will be working really well and then especially with the AI voiceovers, I've noticed that as well. It can be really hard to get that reliably.
Ava, any thoughts from you on the AI front?
Yeah, I think it definitely takes fine-tuning to get a lot of the prompts right for image generation, still voiceover, and then also music. We've expanded a lot into AI music this year. This has been really popular with our team, and our clients loved it too. Tools like Suno AI have really opened up having custom music tracks, which normally we wouldn't be able to work with musicians in certain budgets, and now we can kind of get more customized audio that we've been using with and without lyrics. So that's been really popular and fun to work with, but I think definitely the, prompts have on or off days. Like sometimes it takes a little bit of nudging and spending a lot of time with it to get it there. I use AI a lot for ideation as well, especially with image generation, just because it allows me to get a lot of bad ideas out quickly and see a lot of creative ideation and planning and kind of know where I want to spend more time honing and refining. So I think, as Rachael mentioned, everything definitely still needs a human touch, but we're getting a lot further with tools that do save time. I think I was on the podcast last year and kind of boldly made the prediction that AI would be able to make an ad from start to completion. And we are seeing that if you want a really low quality ad. So we're not quite there where we're seeing good performance yet, but we definitely are seeing it with image generation, video generation, voiceover, and music. So all the elements are there, but I do still think it needs a human to tie it all together.
Okay, cool. Well, for time's sake, I kind of want to move past these kind of key meta trends that we're watching this year and talk a little bit into sort of like process and collaboration, which might sound boring, but I think it's like super important and a big part of the differentiator of our approach here. So for anyone who maybe this is your first Upptic content, we kind of think of everything in what we call the 3 pillars, which is like creative, growth, and analytics. And like the relationship between all those 3 pillars is how you get really good growth marketing outcomes. To start with, I kind of want to talk about the relationship between data and creative and how our team here approaches it and any advice you have for teams there. So yeah, I don't know, Ava, if you want to maybe start here, how are we incorporating data into our creative development process here, and how should other teams be thinking about that?
Yeah, we're really fortunate at Upptic. We have very close collaboration with the creative and UA team. So on every client account, we have a creative lead and a UA manager that work really closely on monitoring all the data and the testing. So we are able to make really data-informed decisions, which I think is a big thing that sets us apart from other creative teams, honestly. I hear from a lot of colleagues that we just don't know how the ads are doing. We don't have data. We're kind of like shooting blind. So I'm very grateful that that's never the case on our team. And our clients are usually very data-driven also. When we're showing them the results every week on the performance of the ads, they usually, that builds a lot of trust with our clients for them to give us, a little bit more trust in the decision-making and testing process. But we love A/B testing. We love testing top-performing iterations. And our team's very, I think, open to just letting the data make, the best choices and iterations. There's a lot of intuition that goes into it as well, but certainly a lot of testing and data-informed decisions.
I think Upptic is very different in the fact that all of our creative leads work one-to-one with UA managers. Like I haven't been at a company before that does that, so I can speak directly with the UA manager on a client I'm working with and talk about the data one-to-one, which is incredibly helpful.
Yeah, which is just wild to me. I've like shown up on jobs, first day on the job in other parts of my career, and there's like no relationship between the user acquisition team and the creative team. And that's like absolutely wild and criminal to me, because the creative is literally the product that the user acquisition team is shipping out into the world for millions and millions of impressions. And so to not have that feedback loop and dialogue and working relationship is like absolutely criminal. Like that's like, stop everything else and fix that relationship if you don't have that relationship within your team right now.
Yeah, and with data, we're kind of going blind too on what creatives we're producing. Like I watch a ton of ads, so I can pick out trends just from seeing so many doing this job day in and day out. But like I wouldn't know those like minute details unless I'm talking to a data manager.
So let's actually talk about the other side of that coin. So we're talking about data as a feedback loop, but I think an issue I've seen for some teams is they only are reactive. Like they only produce new creative based on what the feedback loop or what they see competitors doing. So how do you as a team balance like that feedback loop of data with just sort of innovation and intuition and new ideas?
I think it's important to try new ideas. I think there should always be a mix of the tried and true that are reliable and then trying out new concepts. And they shouldn't always just be things that we see already done, because the only way to find new winners is by trying new concepts. Getting mid-performers doesn't really give us a lot of information. Making something that's more of a risk, yes, maybe it can flop, but it can also end up being a huge win. And being willing to take those risks, even if it flops, that's information. If we just do the same thing we've already done over and over and over again, we're not getting new information. So I think it's really important to try new things, take risks. Yeah, try to find those new trends and those big wins on our own instead of waiting around for other people to find it and then chasing after it.
Yeah, I think it's great when you have a client too who trusts you and is willing to just let you try some things. Like if you've delivered, consistent work that has done well and you have a good relationship with that client, just being able to be like, hey, I don't have data to back this up, and this is probably the most creative thing I will say. I've just got a gut feeling, just let me try this. And being able to do that, there's a lot of freedom there. And yeah, like Kate said, sometimes it flops, sometimes you have an unexpected winner.
And two, also, even if it flops in UA, a lot of the times it can be good for social, or it's an interesting brand piece, or it kind of like, it's like pulling on a thread to get somewhere else in the journey too. So I think like while we're mostly focused on making, videos and setting for UA content, there's a lot of other elements that can kind of get uncovered in the creative process as well.
Yeah, it's
To not to like get too attached to the idea of like, oh, this doesn't work, thus it will never work, because things that work in the past, stop working. Things that don't work start working. That things change and shift. So if you haven't done something for a very, very long time, that doesn't mean that you should never do it. You should often try it out and see. Who knows? Maybe it'll suddenly start doing well.
Yeah, absolutely. To that point, Kade, I think like data can be dangerous sometimes if people are a little too reductionary. I've ran into a lot of data-driven teams that are like, okay, we're going to produce, 3 animated creative, 3 UGC creative, 3 wildcard creative. I don't know. Pick your thing. But they'll do an initial test, and then they'll use that as a data point moving forward and say, oh no, we already did an A/B test on this. UGC doesn't work for our game, or animation doesn't work for our game. And it's like, man, it's so much more complex than that. And you also just have like a good versus bad execution of it. So I think sometimes people can reduce creative too much down to data points and lose sight of like, this is actual content, and there's the quality of the content and how compelling it's made and how timely it is. So there's so many more pieces to it.
I think it's akin to if an action movie was made and didn't do well, and then people said, thus action movies are bad and nobody likes them ever. It's
right.
It's the same mentality. It's all about how something's done. It's not necessarily just putting things into boxes and then coming to, across the board conclusions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing that I think a lot about and talk to teams about when it comes to sort of data relative to like volume of creative and creative testing is a big mistake teams do is they focus on sort of the number, almost like a commodity of creative, of like, what is the right number of creative for a game launch? Or like, we're spending $100,000 a month. How many creative do we need? And sometimes we'll present a plan to 3 different partners of ours, and one might think the same number of creative is way too low. Another one might think it's way too high. But it really depends on how you're viewing what a creative is as a unit. Here at Upptic, and what we recommend to most teams, is think of it as sort of like a differentiated unit on the concept level. Like, does thing A feel wholly differentiated from thing B? Then it's a different creative, a different creative concept. And it's less about like, okay, cool, we did, 20 versions of the same video, but we tweaked the first 3 seconds a little bit in each one. Like, who cares? Like, that's your difference in performance as a general rule of thumb is going to be in line with the difference of differentiation. I think it's like this myth that like very tiny changes to creative will drive like meaningful changes. And for some reason, we still see a lot of teams like hung up on this myth and get really fixated on like, no, we need like a higher number of creative. It's really not about that. It's like how many meaningfully differentiated concepts. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox there.
Yeah, chiming in there, I think you're absolutely right, Warren, on that. And like, we only suggest iterating on a top performer. And we do that mostly so we can ask those specific questions that we want to get data and learnings on, because we have a higher volume of installs coming through and traffic coming through that, so we can get that meaningful learnings on that. But it never moves the needle to iterate on a mid-pack or like lower bottom performing creative. It just doesn't make a difference in that regard. So we only suggest iterating on the winners and giving that time to ask those specific questions. And you only need really like one breakout winner to fuel that. So the experimentation process that drives it, I think, is crucial, as Kade identified. Yeah.
Awesome. So we talked a little bit about the collaboration and relationship between like a user acquisition department and a creative department. What are the other kind of cross-team relationships that are really important for a creative team to build throughout a business?
I think close collaboration with the product team, the developers, is crucial. It always is really great when we have a person on their creative department as a point of contact, like a creative director, art director, that's very familiar with the brand and the game. And it's really helpful when we do have access to game artists or copywriters or, people who have insight into the whole product. So we find a lot of our partnerships that are the most successful are really collaborative, where we can have really in-depth product walkthroughs of the game and just understand like what are the seasonal updates they're running, what are the in-game, events that are really current, what assets are you guys working with. So it's much better for everyone when we have close collaboration between those teams.
The next thing I want to kind of touch on is just sort of the balance between performance and kind of the spirit of actual creativity and kind of adventureness in our process and all of your process as creators. Being that we are, as a business, very focused on performance, both for our sake, but also for our client's sake. How do y'all balance that for your own work and for your team, just balancing creativity with just fun, innovation, playfulness, joy, the things that we actually want creative to embody? It's a big question.
I personally, for me, I try to make sure I find a way to fit in time to learn new things and try new things to keep myself creatively engaged. So whether it is, learning how to do new things in After Effects, or trying new concept, or, pitching ideas that I haven't done before, or, filming things live action we haven't done before. There are ways for me to push myself creatively and grow creatively while still working in advertising.
Yeah, and we can't all be experts in every subject. We have a very diverse creative team. So we have experts, in 3D animation or UGC or, all different topics, copywriting. So it's really great when our team members can take the time to have some research and development time to focus on the things that they want, and then they can teach the group. So we have calls on our team to support, learning between team members and to give demos of what you're excited about learning, even if it's a personal project or just a new technique that you're working on or have found more about that you're not an expert in, but you're working on it and would like some, feedback and insight into. So I think that the ways that we find cross team collaboration in those ways have been really helpful for the whole creative team. And it's just also just fun for us as well to be able to share and have that space to teach.
Being 100% remote, it is really tough to stay motivated and creative sometimes. And I think it's just super important to set aside time to be able to talk with the rest of your team and share ideas and share bad ads and share great ads. It may not seem like the most creative thing to put a meeting on the calendar that says creative time, but it really does help. And yeah, I find that just from watching a lot of ads, one or two will really stand out and honestly get me excited about a game. And then that's when you can really kind of dissect it and look at it and be like, okay, why is this exciting to me? And, how can I either iterate on this or replicate it? And just what caught my attention in the first place.
I think also in line with that too, just having a culture where it's okay to experiment and fail. We've been doing this here at Upptic for over 5 years now. I don't think there's ever been a moment in our history where we told someone, hey, this is bad, your idea didn't perform. So if you can't have that experimentation and failure, you're never going to find those breakthroughs. So that's the last thing I'd add there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you need a lot of humility on being a creative lead on an account too. I think there's lots of ideas that designers on our team have pitched that I'm oh, I don't know about that. I can't see this working, but if they feel really confident on it and kind of back it up with other examples or just intuitive gut hunch on it, then we've seen some really interesting creative breakout winners there that I wouldn't have bet on. So I'm always delighted when I'm wrong and we find new information. But yeah, we're a very collaborative and supportive team, and I think that really helps because creatives tend to be a little more on the sensitive side. I think we're all artists, and so it's just create such a better work environment when you're supportive rather than shooting down ideas or finding reasons why things won't work. It's a lot easier just to run them and test them and get the data on them for everyone.
I think the funny thing is when you intentionally go against design principles. So when you as a designer know this would get scoffed at, by a graphic design teacher. It looks aesthetically bad, but if it performs well, it performs well. If it resonates, it resonates. So, being able to go against what your instinct as a designer might be and kind of put your pride aside. And if it does well, it does well.
Yeah, that comes to mind a concept we've seen working a few times. Internally, we call it the overload or sludge concept. I don't know if anyone wants to try to describe to our listeners what that is.
Yeah, I mean, some people would call it brain rot. So it's where you have multiple things going on at the time on screen at a time. So it's if you think of someone talking and then you see gameplay of Subway Surfers going on at the same time, and then there's someone doing ASMR on the same time, and it's just sensory overload. And as a designer, I look at that and I'm ugh, no, this is bad design. This looks bad. But people like it. It's entertaining. It stimulates them. It performs well. It's eye-catching. It does well. So as a designer, that's kind of putting your pride aside, that when your aesthetically pleasing ad with beautiful motion graphics doesn't resonate, and something that is, brain rot does. You have to put your pride aside.
Yeah, I think that's a good tip for everyone. Don't get too up on your high horse when it comes to creatives. Like, they should be fun, and they can be a little ridiculous. We're getting close to time. Thank you all so much. I guess for like final thoughts, I'd love to go around and just sort of either like one trend or one shift on the horizon that y'all are thinking about a lot. It could be something good, could be something that you're nervous about. A final thought about the future from the group.
I think most creatives have a certain degree of nervousness about AI. It could be a little bit of a white elephant in the room, but as much as it can be a powerful tool to help creatives, it can also be an intimidating thing because none of us want to be replaced by robots. So it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, and I think for me, being in the industry for a while, I remember when we saw the rise of gameplay, straight up gameplay recordings with like the hand clicking on things, and we were really pushed to pump out a lot of those. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's the death of my animation career. I'm just going to be animating hands this entire time. But, all things come and go in cycles. So I think that we're going to start to see more polished motion graphics and animation start to come back in the next year. And I am really good at animating hands now.
Yeah, I definitely think there will be that pendulum swing. We always see that in design trends where we veer one way strongly, swing back the other. I do think that the developer style interview video is going to continue to do well with just like leaning into that authenticity and connection with the developers and then people behind the games. I think that's one of the trends that I'm most excited to continue pushing into 2025.
I think people are going to continue to wise up to the very clear fake gameplay ones where it's not representative of the game. And yeah, I think that users are going to keep souring to that.
Yeah, I always wince a little bit when teams reach out to us like, hey, can you make us some of those fake gameplay ads? I'm like, I don't think you know what you're asking for.
Yeah.
Like, you can, but it's not going to be a great investment of your creative resourcing. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. We have a really awesome creative team here, and thank you all for taking a little bit of time from your very, very busy schedules working on our games and our clients. Yeah, I think that concludes our roundtable today. And if anyone out there needs help with creative, these are just some of the awesome folks we have on the team here. Besides working with creative at Upptic, we do stuff, all things user acquisition, all things data analytics and data modeling related to marketing growth. And then we also build a really cool suite of software tools for your own teams to have a lot of the same benefits and edge that our team gets from the software. So if any of that is interesting to you, you can reach us on our website. It's upptic.com, upptic.com. Thanks, everyone. Take care.